And the Lakers are always seem at the top. Just because, there's nothing like I see from them where it takes like I can say that a team can beat them in a 7-game series. Hello and welcome to the Friday, January 8th edition of the TV on Basketball podcast with your host, TV. Hope you're all having a fantastic Friday or whenever you're watching this. And thank you so much for clicking on to watch or listen to today's episode. But before we start, I have to plug my other platforms. Remember to follow at TV on Basketball on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for updates on the podcast and for other content. If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe. That would be highly appreciated. We are almost at 20 subscribers, so continue to show some love. And for all the podcast listeners, remember to subscribe and leave a review if you're on Apple. If you're in the US or outside of Canada, just send me the review and I'll definitely give you a shout out. And as for Spotify, Anchor, and Podbean listeners, just continue to show your support. Listen to the episodes. That'll be highly appreciated. And yeah, I have a great show lined up for you today. Today, we're going to be talking about the COVID issue that happened last night, right before the Philadelphia-Brooklyn game. We're going to be talking about the crazy MVP race that's going on right now in the NBA, some unfortunate injuries, and more. So sit back, relax, and let's get into the first topic. But before we get into that, how are you guys liking the sound, by the way? I just got a new mic. I got a ring light here as well to help with the lighting a bit. So yeah, I'm excited for this podcast to really move forward here, getting better quality, especially on the audio and visual side. So hopefully you guys definitely see the difference, and it definitely hopefully it enhances your experience listening to this. So yeah, now that we got out the way, let's get into the first topic. And we're going to be starting with the COVID issue that happened last night. Prior to the start of the 76ers and Brooklyn Nets game, 76er Seth Curry tested positive for COVID-19. Now, this was very interesting because this was something that they learned prior to the game, but the game was already tipped off, so they couldn't really do anything about it. And yeah, they were just alerted, and Seth had to isolate right away. As for the 76ers, they're going to have to isolate in New York for the time being. We don't know how long that is. I know 76er big man Joel Embiid wants to isolate with his family more than anything. And this just seems to be the first big hurdle of this NBA season so far. We knew positive cases were inevitable, and now that something like this has happened, especially with a player who has participated in team activities, who has been around the team, how the NBA is going to respond to this. There's definitely going to be a lot more testing, but a lot of the question still remains. How many teams does this affect? How does this affect their opponents from their prior games? Does this affect the Brooklyn Nets? We're not 100% sure yet. It is still a very, it's still kind of, I'm not going to say unknown, but it's something that I think the NBA is going to have to deal with, like, head on. Like, this is, I think there's probably some protocols that will happen, but in this type of scenario, especially where Seth Curry was participating prior to the game and shoot around and stuff like that, they didn't have the test results back, and then they came out and they were positive. This definitely hampers what the NBA was trying to do here. And like I said, they probably didn't want this early into the season. What are we, like, most teams are like 7-8 games in. This was not something that the NBA wanted to start off with, but this is where the NBA is going to have to prove like that they can handle this. They were able to do this in the bubble, but this is their first adversity when during this regular season, because we know the travel issues are happening. They had to move the Toronto Raptors to Tampa to avoid just over the border stuff, and now there's still there's cases like coming along. I know the Bulls, like one of the Bulls players, also had a COVID case, but they were able to track it right away and kind of get him isolated so he doesn't really affect his teammates. This is something that happened prior to the game, so this is definitely going to be interesting to see what the NBA does. because I definitely don't think they want to halt the season, especially with the way it's going right now. They have this kind of concrete plan and stuff like that. They want to have this season continue with very little problems as possible. So this is where the NBA is going to have to show their worth. This is where they're going to have to show that they're able to follow these guidelines. They're able to deal with this COVID issue that they have here. And let's see how they're going to respond. The NFL has done it in multiple by doing it by postponing games and stuff like that. This will be interesting to see if the NBA will do the same with the 76ers. So it's unfortunate right now, especially this early into the season, but hopefully the NBA will figure this out. Let's move on to this. Because the 76ers have been one of the best teams in the league so far. I know they lost yesterday to the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, they looked really sluggish last night. The Brooklyn Nets looked pretty motivated. Kyrie couldn't play yesterday due to personal reasons. No, I was about to do a topic on that, but hopefully Kyrie is doing okay and stuff. I mean, maybe he had to do something with Capitol Hill. I don't want to assume things, but hopefully he's okay. But back to the 76ers. They're, I think, having one of the best records in the league so far. Definitely the best in the East. And they're doing it with their main star, Joel Embiid, playing at an extremely high level. And you can really make the argument that maybe, just maybe, Joel Embiid should be in the MVP discussion. I was hoping for that to happen last year, but so far this year, he's been playing very, very well. Averaging 25 points a game, 11 rebounds, 2 blocks. And this got me thinking, who are some of the early MVP candidates that are in the league right now? Well, you could point to the usuals. LeBron, Steph, Kevin Durant when healthy, James Harden when healthy, as just like some of the typical candidates. But in my opinion, some of the top guys for MVP right now are some players that you won't expect. And not really expect, because they're really good players still. But it's unlike, other years that this award happened, these award races happened, because there was a lot of guards, there was a lot of forwards. But now I think some of the most of this MVP race as of January 8th right now is a lot to do with a lot of these big men that are playing at an extremely high level. So let's talk about them, because we could talk about LeBron, we could talk about Steph, we could talk about KD, but that's boring. They're always going to be in the conversation every year. But here's some other candidates that definitely need to get shown some love. One of them being Joel Embiid, as I mentioned earlier. 25.3 points per game, 11.7 rebounds, 1.9 blocks per game. He is playing at an extremely high level, and he is trying to take back that crown as best center in the league. And you could tell that Joel Embiid's game is kind of changing right now for the better. And you could see it when he is operating with the ball. Usually with Joel Embiid, he kind of tries to force a shot. If not, he kind of makes an errant pass after he gets stopped. But in this year, Joel Embiid's game has added a lot more patience. You can tell that he wants to get to his spots. You can tell he's trying to read the defense. And he's playing at an extremely high level. He wants that best center in the league crown. Because last year, with the injuries and the lack of 76er success, Nikola Jokic has taken over that conversation. And Joel Embiid right now, higher shooting percentages as he had in previous years. I think that he's finally over 50%, which is very good. He's hitting the 3-ball. He's playing well on the defensive end, on the offensive end. He is playing absolutely fantastic so far this season. He should definitely be in the running. And speaking of the best center in the game, Nikola Jokic is right up there with him in the MVP race. In my opinion, he's ahead of him. Not because of the record, because the Denver Nuggets right now sit at 3-5. There has not been a kind start to them. But the only player that's keeping them afloat so far this season has been Nikola Jokic. Last night in that loss to the Dallas Mavericks, Jamal Murray came out the gates firing. He was playing absolutely fantastic, and it was kind of the opposite of most of these other games. Nikola Jokic went off to a slow start, and Jamal Murray was the one on fire, when in most of these games, Jokic was the one who had a hot start, and Jamal Murray was, struggling. But that only happened in the first half, because Jamal Murray kind of disappeared in the second half. Nikola Jokic, especially in that fourth quarter and overtime period, was playing fantastic. He finished off yesterday scoring 38 points, 11 rebounds, and a measly 4 assists for Nikola Jokic. A measly 4 assists. Like, come on, Joker. You're supposed to be one of the best passing big men. No, I'm just joking here. But he's had a fantastic season. Averages of 24 and 25 points per game, 12 rebounds, just under 10 assists. He is playing absolutely fantastic. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He has just been phenomenal so far this season. I mean, he's averaging a triple-double as a big man. Right here, right now. And this is unlike Nikola Jokic from previous years. He usually would struggle early in the season. But, and then find his footing in December and January. But this year, the NBA season started in December and January, so maybe that is what changed things. But so far, if I had to pick I know like he has not been, has been on the best team, but he's definitely up there for MVP candidacy. And hopefully he can keep it up for the rest of the season. And hopefully the Denver Nuggets, start getting some wins, because I do want to see, some other people like that you wouldn't expect in this conversation to win it. I mean, Joel Embiid after last year, there's still a chance, but everyone's going to be looking at those main guys, LeBron, Steph, KD, Harden. It's very easy to look at those guys. Luka Doncic, you can add to that group as well. But these guys playing at a high level right now, especially at the big man position, they definitely deserve some love. And I know this next person I'm going to be talking about is definitely not going to win MVP, but he's playing at a level right now that we need to talk about. And if the season ended today, I think he would be in top 4 MVP candidate. Would be a top 4 MVP candidate. And I'm not even joking here. I'm talking about Julius Randle. 23 points per game, 12 rebounds per game, almost 8 assists a game on a 5-3 New York Knicks team. You heard that right. A 5-3 New York Knicks team. They've been overachieving. That's what it really is. And Julius Randle has had some phenomenal games this year. Him and RJ Barrett, working together pretty well this year. And one of the biggest changes you could see in Julius Randle's game, in RJ Barrett's game, and you can maybe attribute this to the whole team. They're playing the Tom Thibodeau system. Play hard on the defensive end, and the offense you'll get it eventually. Julius Randle's playing on just under 40 minutes a game. Him and RJ Barrett are leading the league in in minutes played, as per Tibbs teams usually do. And Julius Randle, really looking like he's taking the next step. 23 points a game, 12 rebounds, 7 assists. He's playing phenomenal. And I don't think this is going to last. This is definitely not going to last, but it's fun that early in the season that the Knicks are playing well, and that if you ended the season today, if you ended it, they would have a top 4 MVP candidate. And I'm not even capping. Julius Randle has been that good this season. And let's just hope that he's able to carry it out for the rest of it. Maybe not 23, 12, and 8, but 21 points a game, maybe around 10 rebounds, maybe around 5 assists. That would be a very successful season for Julius Randle and the Knicks. Maybe instead of the Julius Randle MVP hype train, let's go over this. Maybe let's have him, most improved player. I know he has had a pretty okay NBA career so far, but he hasn't had like these massive type of numbers. Even when he was with the Los Angeles Lakers, like the most points a game he had in one season was 21. And that wasn't when that was on a bad team. If he can, keep up these averages, I think this is the only way he's going to be able to do it. Like maybe average 23, 24 points a game, 12 rebounds, and, pretty high assist numbers. I think it's possible that you could put him in most improved, especially if the Knicks continue to win. So yeah, I mean, this is what's crazy about just this season in general. You just have had these different players, playing at a really high level, and it's all really about just trying to maintain that. So yeah, this MVP race could be crazy this year, and hopefully, we get like a lot of like different, choices here, because usually it turns out to be a 2-man race at the end of the year. Let's hope that there's like a lot of players that you can, make a case for. Let's move on to this. This is usually the part of the show where I talk about just some recent injuries that happened, and so far, and this week, it's more of the same. There have been some pretty rough injuries that have occurred. We're going to start with the one that happened first. Killian Hayes, first round pick, 7th overall pick for the Detroit Pistons, is out for the rest of the season with a torn labrum in his right hip. This has been definitely a rough start to the career of Killian Hayes. I was a big fan of him coming in from France. I know Critical Condition Sports, who was on the show before the season, as we were doing our previews, talked about how Killian Hayes, he was pretty high on him, and he could be a dark horse rookie of the year candidate. And, transitioning to the NBA game, especially from Europe, is definitely hard, and the Pistons were giving him a chance. He was their starting point guard, and although he hasn't had a great start to his career, he hasn't had a great start whatsoever. 4.6 points per game, 28% from the on field goals, and 50% from the free throw line. It's just something rookies have to go through. Hitting this rookie wall, struggling early to find their footing in the league. There's just something that they kind of had to go through. And, right in the midst of him, in the struggle, him trying to figure stuff out, he gets hit with this injury, and it's just highly, highly unfortunate. I was hoping to see just some growth maybe throughout the season, maybe have those stats improve, because let's be honest, it's not going to stay like that, especially with a starting point guard in the NBA. It just isn't. And we're just not going to be able to see that. Good thing is he's very young. He is 19 years of age. Hopefully he can bounce back from that, because I would love to see him back on the court. But I don't want to compare injuries and all that, but this next injury kind of hurt to see, especially just knowing because of all the struggles that this guy has gone through, and now he has to kind of be back on the medical bed and all that. And I'm talking about Markelle Fultz. He had an ACL tear. I believe it was Wednesday or Tuesday, when he was driving down the lane. He kind of buckled his knee, and it was bad. He was grimacing in pain. He was kind of rolling around. It just looked really bad. Those non-contact injuries are always seem to be, the worst ones. And what's unfortunate about this is that, Markelle Fultz was starting to find his place in the NBA. After those rough years early with the Philadelphia 76ers, number 1 overall pick out of Washington, he was hoping to be, their starting point guard for their future. And he's had those shoulder problems. It didn't look like he was going to be able to shoot in the NBA. Let's be completely honest. His jump shot was whack, and he really couldn't stay on the court, especially with the 76ers. They trade him away to the Orlando Magic. He gets a chance at the starting point guard role, and he was starting to figure stuff out. Over the last 2 years, 12 points a game, 5 assists a game. And he secured that bag as well, over the offseason. After that rough start to his NBA career, he was able to sign a 3-year, $51 million deal. Everything was looking on the come up for Markelle Fultz, and we were just excited, especially as NBA fans, to see his growth. And now he gets hit with this ACL tear in his second season as a starting point guard on this team. And it sucks. Life ain't fair. This is definitely ain't fair. Trying to overcome one issue and then being met with another one. It just sucks. It really just sucks for the guy. I really do feel for him. I want to see him back out on the court, doing his thing. And we're not going to be able to see that. But I believe in him. He was able to overcome, all that adversity with from the internet. He was able to, improve his jumper. Let's be honest. He's 73% from the free throw line right now. When, early in his career, I'm like, he's going to be a max, at 60%? He's going to be a max, if you asked me that a few years ago. But he's gone better, and he's, definitely, have tried to alleviate those issues. And this is just, another barricade in his way, but I do think he will, continue, get back, hopefully play well again. Medicine is fantastic these days, so hopefully he makes a full recovery. And I just can't wait to see him back on the court. I really do feel for the guy. Get well soon, Markelle Fultz. Let's hope that we can get him back on the court. Let's move on to this. We go from a team who's, let's be honest, the Orlando Magic are overachieving right now. It's been a really easy schedule. I believe they're sitting at, 6-3, 6-2. They're playing really well. And, this is a type of team that's kind of been that surprising team this year. And this next topic, it's not going to be a surprising team. We're going to be talking about the Lakers. And the reason I decided to talk about the Lakers today was because we haven't really been talking about them this NBA season. Just because they've been kind of doing their thing. I mean, it hasn't, like, nothing really has stood out with the Los Angeles Lakers. They're just doing exactly what we expect them to do. I mean, it was easy to talk about them in the bubble because they just kept advancing, and then eventually winning the championship. But this season, we got to look at the other teams, some of the surprising teams, some of these, like, stand-up performers. And then you look at the Lakers, who are, I believe, who just dropped to the number 3 seed in the West, maybe number 2 seed. And, they're just doing their thing. Like, if you just watch out these last few games with the Memphis Grizzlies, barring yesterday because they did lose. But, actually, it wasn't the Memphis Grizzlies game. They faced the Spurs yesterday. But if you look at the past Spurs games, you look at the past Memphis Grizzlies games, they've been close. But when the Lakers need to turn it on, they turn it on when it matters, and they're able to just pull out these wins. And that's what you have to do as a good team. Even when things seem dire, like, you have the pieces to put you over the top. And this is without, LeBron going full throttle. Same thing with Anthony Davis. I mean, LeBron still near average triple-double, I think 25, 8, and 7 or something like that right now. He's playing at a very high level, but this is not, 100% LeBron. We already know that. And he does this, every single regular season. But Anthony Davis is falling right now. I mean, 22 points a game as well this season for Anthony Davis. He hasn't been on his best. And a lot of people are trying to make the argument for him being MVP this year just because LeBron's going to be taking it easy. But let's be honest. It looks like the whole team is trying to taking it easy and just waiting for that moment for when, they need to turn up. And that's just, what they've been doing all season. They're top 2 in defense, top 10 in offense. They're just having another great year. And they just become, that team in the NBA, who has been like a true constant. Every other team kind of has their question marks. Even if you look at the top contenders, the Boston Celtics, I don't like their big man situation. The Milwaukee Bucks, can Giannis lead a team past the second, throughout the playoffs? I can just go on and on. The Clippers, will they be able to show up in the playoffs? And the one team that's a constant, like in the NBA right now, as to like being that number 1 title contender and not really having that many issues, is the Los Angeles Lakers. And this is why, like, if you like been listening to my my Monday podcast, I always have my power rankings, and the Lakers are always seeming at the top, just because there's nothing like I see from them where it takes like I can say that a team can beat them in a 7-game series. I really don't. And this has to do a lot, with the culture they have there. Obviously, having LeBron James, but I just trust them. Like, when they need to turn it on, they'll be able to, and I think that just kind of takes them like a whole level above the rest of these teams. I think there's a nice little cluster that's right under the Lakers. As those title contenders. You could throw into Boston, you can throw in Brooklyn, the Clippers, the Celtics, all that good stuff. But the Lakers are just a whole level above them. And until they can find some consistency, and they can prove to me otherwise, the other teams, I really don't see anyone dethroning the Lakers this year, man. I really don't. And one of those teams that the Lakers did beat earlier in the season, and this is a team that one of their teams that they lost to, is going to be the next topic, and that's the Portland Trailblazers. And the reason I want to talk to them is I had high expectations for them. If you remember my preseason, prediction for this team, I had them as a 4th seed in the West. And now, while that's still a possibility, they've been underachieving. They really have been. And a lot of that has to do with how poor their defense has been. I thought them, bringing along Derrick Jones Jr., trading for Robert Covington, those things would have kind of improved just because they have like these players with them. But it hasn't. They're still ranked in the bottom 10, bottom 5 in the league in terms of defensive rating. Like, the offense is there. The offense will always be there. They'll always have a top 10 offense, having Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum. That's just them two will handle your offense. But the defensive end, they just cannot stop anyone. They really cannot. And I know it's early in the season. I really do. But the thing is, this problem has kind of been persisting over the last few years. And I think at this point, you're not going to be able to trade Covington until probably December, I think, until January or February. You're not going to trade Derrick Jones Jr. You just need those wing defenders. They're highly important. And right now I'm looking at the big man position. And as much as I like Yusuf Nurkic, he was really good in the bubble, really good pre his injury. He's just not a good defensive center. And at times you have, like in the game, you have, him paired up with Melo, paired up with that backcourt. And the defense is just atrocious. And at this point, you gotta just look at the situation if you're the Portland Trailblazers and say, Nurk might have some value. He still has a couple years left on his deal. Can we trade him for a defensive center? Now, I don't know who that'd be, but I think that is something that really needs to be the case. Because as much as Nurkic is a good player, you have Enes Kanter coming off the bench, and that big man, duo of him and Kanter, they're not stopping anyone. They're really not. And they're going to need, if they want to make a deep run, if they want to have a really good regular season, they're going to need, that defensive big inside to, be a deteriorator, because everyone's attacking them at any way possible. If you get past that first line of defense of Derrick Jones Jr. and Covington, it's basically GG's at that point. And yes, they did get the win yesterday. Yes, they're at 500. But they've just been definitely underperforming, and I would like to see them, do well, because I had them high up in my rankings, and I just wanted to see this team do well. So hopefully they could, fix those things. But right now, they have definitely underachieved. Now we're staying in the West, though, with another topic I do want to discuss. And that's going to be the San Antonio Spurs. I haven't talked about them much this year, but they've been okay. I think that same as the Portland Trailblazers, they just reached 500 with a good win over the Los Angeles Lakers yesterday. They played really well in that game, and they avoided a 4-game losing streak. And now the Spurs are, I'm not sure if they're at 500 or just below it, but they've had some pretty good wins. And I've been liking a lot of their young guys. Keldon Johnson has had a pretty good year this year. Lonnie Walker, when he's been given the opportunity, has had his moments. Hopefully Derek White can come back from that toe injury, because I think he would be great to assimilate him into that front core as well, to that young core as well. And they've been playing a lot younger. This is not the Spurs team that we've been used to over these last 2 decades or so. They are top 10 in pace, and you could tell they're focusing on developing these young guys. And at this point, I can confidently say that LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan are holding them back. Not, the Spurs from getting wins, but from the development of these young guys. Like I said, Johnson, Derek White, Lonnie Walker. They will, you have to give them a chance. That's all you got to say. You got to kind of go all in on this youth movement if you're the San Antonio Spurs, because it's just what you need to do long term. As much as I love DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge's game, they are meant to be on teams where they're competing for championships, a typical playoff contender, who is like established themselves, who want to go to the playoffs, who want to try and take that next step to the championship. And for the Spurs, I don't think that's what you want to do right now. You want to see what you got in those young guys. You drafted that. I forgot the guy he drafted this year, but you got to go all in on this youth movement. Bring in some picks, bring in some other young pieces to help, with the development of this team. And I know that's all really what I don't know, what the Spurs fans really want to happen, because, Pop is probably in his final years of coaching, and it's been kind of unfortunate because he has, had that 20-year playoff streak. You've seen him win 5 championships with, Tim Duncan and all them. And this would be a tough way to go out, trusting the young guys and stuff like that. But I think this would just be the best move for the team. I know, DeMar DeRozan picked up his player option this year, but I know teams are still going to want him. LaMarcus Aldridge, he's on a pretty big contract. I think he has 1 or 2 years left, but he still can contribute to a really good team. And I think that value, you're going to be able to get some stuff. You're going to be able to get some picks. You might get some bad contracts, but I think going all in on this youth movement would just be kind of the best plan of action for these Spurs. And I know that's, like I said, it's not the way you want to see Pop go out. You want to see him, make another run at a championship. But you got to be realistic here. You you have something in these young guys, and you're not going to see, what their full potential can be when you have these veterans such as, Aldridge, DeRozan, even throw Rudy Gay in the mix, who are kind of holding them back. So I think at this point, the Spurs, I'm not saying that they won't make the playoffs this year. They could easily make it to the play-in tournament if they play at a high level. But I just think that this is just I think it's just time. We don't like saying that the Spurs should blow it up, but I think this is finally the time that they should. Let's move on to one more topic before we head into the game of the night. And I do want to start talking about these rookies. I mentioned in my Christmas episode that you got to let these rookies, take time to develop, because this has definitely been, a different process for them. They didn't get the summer league experience. They barely got a training camp. And they've really been thrown into the NBA fire just like right away. And I applaud them, because there's some of these rookies that are kind of balling out. Not one really like pulling away from the others. So that got me thinking, who is my rookie of the year so far this year? I have a couple of players I do want to discuss here. Some other rookies, unfortunately, haven't been really given a big chance in the NBA yet. But these players I do want to talk about have had some opportunities, and I think that it's a pretty close, rookie of the year race. So let's go through this. In my opinion, the favorite right now has to be James Wiseman. 11.3 points per game, 6 rebounds per game. And he just looks like the most NBA-ready player. Arguably, because there's someone else on this list I do want to talk about. But he looks really good, starting center for the Golden State Warriors. Doing a bit of everything, to be completely honest. And I think that he will be a absolutely valuable piece for them going forward. Or if the Warriors still want to trade him once Clay comes back, he'll have some value. But at the end of the day, I still think he's going to be a really good player. He's able to hit the three, go on the boards, catch lobs. I think he's just exactly the big man the Warriors needed. And right now, he's like one of my favorites to win Rookie of the Year. And then there's like a lot of other candidates here. Obviously, we got to talk about the other two top picks. Anthony Edwards at number 1, LaMelo Ball at number 3. I want to kind of group them together here just because they're both in very similar situations. Anthony Edwards actually had a career high yesterday in the loss to the Portland Trailblazers, scoring 26 points. But him and Ball are kind of in the same situation. Both on kind of mediocre teams, coming off the bench, but, having some sort of production. Edwards, 14 points a game, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. LaMelo Ball, basically 12, 5, and 5. I can expect Ball to be starting soon, though, because Devontae Graham, yikes, he's had a bad start to this year. I think he's like under 10 points a game. But, him, I expect him to start soon. Anthony Edwards, they're going to have to, find a way to fit him in. I mean, he still needs to kind of like have that kind of that oomph to this game. Maybe, I haven't really seen like much stardom, to be completely honest, but he's looking like a pretty good player. I mean, he has like all the tools. Let's just see if he's able to put it all together. But, they're both in the same situation. I'm just interested to see how they're going to be able to, when are they going to be able to get their opportunity? And when that time comes, are they going to be able to produce? Because right now, I don't think they're going to be like, they're going to be up there in terms of Rookie of the Year voting, especially coming off the bench producing those numbers. But they're not going to pull away from James Wiseman unless they start. And then there's these other two rookies I'm going to discuss players like who we weren't expecting to be in this conversation, but have proven to be an essential part of their team. The first one being Payne Pritchard, by the way. 8.3 points per game, 2.4 rebounds, 3 assists. Doesn't really look that impressive, but he's already, proving that he's the reliable rotation piece for a contender in the Boston Celtics. He had that game winner over Miami the other night, and he killed the Toronto Raptors on Monday when he went off for 23, 26 points. He's had a pretty good year, and the Celtics, Brad Stevens, seem to really like this guy, and they don't they feel comfortable with him being the backup guard, which is kind of rare for these rookies, getting this opportunity, especially on a playoff team. But he's looked really good. I don't think he's going to win Rookie of the Year, but maybe he can sneak into, the all-rookie second team and all that. I think he definitely deserves, some sort of credit for what he's been able to do this year. And the last player I want to discuss is Tyrus Halliburton, one of my favorite players coming into this draft. He was the one player I claimed to be my guy for this draft because I really wanted to see him do well. Seen him on an interview with with Kenny, king of the fourth quarter. He just seems like a really cool guy, very smart about the game, and he's definitely translated that onto the basketball court. So far this year, basically 12 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. And he hasn't looked like a rookie. He really hasn't. He looks like a very good complete player who can handle the ball late in games, who can guard pretty good guards. And, at this point, I'm like, how did he drop to 12? How on earth did Tyrus Halliburton drop to 12? I know he had that small injury issue early in the season, but it's good that he came back from that. But the Kings have something here. They have something in him, and Fox is kind of the backcourt of the future. And what I like about him, he's just so calm. He's so composed. He kind of just knows what he's doing out there, especially at such a young age. It's a very, very important skill to have, and he's playing that role very well for the Sacramento Kings. Now, but it's the Kings, so maybe they might mess it up. But I am very excited to see what he's going to be able to do this season, and just in his future as well. Hopefully, he could stay healthy, and hopefully, he is able to play at a high level consistently. But yeah, leave your thoughts below. Who do you think is going to be Rookie of the Year? Who do you think is going to be MVP? And just any thoughts on any of these other topics? Before we head out, I got to do my game of the night. I am now, I believe, 2-3, just because the New Orleans Pelicans lost to the Indiana Pacers on Monday night in overtime. Highly unfortunate, but I'm here to bounce back. We have the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Utah Jazz, with the Milwaukee Bucks at having the 8-point advantage. They have to win by 8 points or more against the Utah Jazz. The Jazz have had some embarrassing losses this week, and in this game, what do I go with? I think I got to go with the Utah Jazz. I don't think they're going to win, but I think they're going to, they probably look at the locker room, they look around, and they're like, look, we're supposed to be a West playoff lock. And we're not playing like that right now. And I think that the Utah Jazz will definitely keep it close. I expect a big game from Donovan Mitchell in here. And a good bounce back from Rudy Gobert, because he got sunned by Jared Allen a couple days ago. And I think with this thing that's happening with Shaq and stuff like that, he wants to prove those those haters wrong. And I think that he would like to, have a good game against a really good team in the Milwaukee Bucks. So I still think Milwaukee's going to win. Giannis is playing still at an MVP level. They're getting good production from Holiday and Middleton. I think that the Bucks will still win this game, but I think the Jazz will use this to try and look a lot more formidable. And minus 8 points is a lot to kind of give up, especially because the Jazz are a playoff team. So at this moment, I'm going to give the Jazz I think they're going to lose by less than 8. So hopefully they're able to do that, and I can get back to 500, because that was so close. I had the Pelicans in the last one, but the Pacers were able to pull out that win, so good for them. But I think this is where we're going to end today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Remember to show love on all the podcast channels. Like, share, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And remember to follow @TV on on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for some great content. It looks like I'm going to have another guest coming on the show next Friday, so be sure to check that out. Remember to, like I said, show your support on all the podcast channels on the YouTube so you won't miss that out. I'm going to be back on Monday with another podcast recapping the weekend. And yeah, I'm just excited for the rest of this NBA season. And, fingers crossed, the Philadelphia 76ers situation is sorted out and we can still continue, playing these games. Again, thank you guys for all your support. Hopefully we can continue to grow this channel, this page within the new year. And yeah, I'm just excited for what's to come. So I hope you all have a fantastic day. TV signing out. Take it easy, guys. Peace.